National Assembly promises close scrutiny of 2026 budget. House concludes debate on new electoral bill, backs e-transmission of results. And reps seek diplomatic solution as C-130 detention ends. Hello and thanks for joining us. This is You and Your Reps on the NTA. I'm Victor, as welcome. The leadership of the National Assembly says it will work closely with the executive to ensure that every naira appropriated in the 2026 budget delivers real value to Nigerians. Lawmakers also say they are holding the president to his pledge of a single January to December budget cycle for each fiscal year going forward.
President Tinubu is not a stranger in Parliament, judging from the reception accorded him during the laying of the 2026 budget proposals. The presiding officers commend the bold economic reforms of the Tinubu administration, piloted by previous budgets, while calling for greater fiscal discipline in the implementation of the 2026 budget.
Every challenge before us is also an invitation to build a more equitable economy, to secure our communities, to restore trust in public life, and to ensure that the promise of Nigeria is not postponed but delivered today.
Growth must increasingly translate into jobs, higher incomes, and expanded opportunity. Your insistence that there should be no parallel budgets, no multiple spending windows, and no fragmented fiscal authorities speaks to discipline, clarity, and respect for due process.
The president's promise to put a stop to multiple budgets running concurrently is a breath of fresh air for lawmakers who desire that the budget proposals for 2026 meet the yearnings and aspirations of the masses.
We are going to call for budget oversight to see what has happened to the remaining of 2024 and the capital of 2025 before we even talk about passing the budget.
He has clarified that at least by April next year, we are going to operate on a single budget. That is a great improvement.
Prior to the laying of the 2026 budget, both chambers in plenary received two executive bills seeking to merge the capital component of the 2024 and 2025 budgets and extend their implementation to 31st of March 2026.
With education emerging as one of the biggest winners in the 2026 budget, we spoke with the chairman of the House Committee on University Education, Abubakar Fulata, on what the allocations could mean for Nigeria's universities.
We hope that it will be really a budget of consolidation, considering the fact that we had some serious challenges in the implementation of the previous year's budget. Budget 2024, budget 2025 had their own serious challenges. We hope that this time around the budget will be adequately funded. As you know, as all Nigerians know, we've not been able to implement the capital component of budget 2025. Mr. President, in his address, promised that both the 2024 and 2025 capital component of the budgets that have not been concluded will be finalized by the end of April. So let's hope that we are hopeful that this time around it will be a success. It's a giant stride. It's a big achievement if you consider the allocations made to the educational sector in the previous year's budget. But then, even at this, it has fallen short of the United Nations requirement of allocation of 20% of the national budget for education. But we have never received it, we've never seen it big this way in previous budgets. So I say it's a giant stride, but still more needs to be done. But it's a big achievement, considering the fact that we have never had 3.5 trillion being allocated to the education sector in previous years. Budgets are statements of intentions premised on expectations. Those expectations are also based on the price of oil per barrel. So if the price of oil goes up, more is expected to be generated. When price of petrol goes down, less is expected to be generated. Previous budgets of 2024-2025 were premised on $75 per barrel. Unfortunately, the price of barrel of oil has remained consistently hovering around 60 to 65. So you can see that already up initio, there was a shortfall of over $10 to $15 per barrel. And therefore, governments are resorted to borrowing both internally and externally. My hope is that this time around, the government has scaled down its expectation of the oil market and therefore pegged the price of crude per barrel at between 60 to 65. That has been the range within which the price of oil has been oscillating. So we're hopeful that this time around we got it right and that we will get the amount so budgeted as far as the oil market is concerned.
Earlier, the House of Representatives concluded work on proposed amendments to the Electoral Act, including measures to criminalize overvoting. That came after lawmakers cleared the way for President Bola Tinubu to address the National Assembly and present the 2026 budget.
The Green Chamber, which traditionally plays host to joint sessions of the National Assembly, indicates readiness to roll out the red carpet for the 2026 budget presentation.
I write to crave the kind indulgence of the House of Representatives to grant me the slot on Friday, 19 December 2025.
I rise to move that this House do admit Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
The House then expeditiously passed the 2026 to 2028 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper, retaining projected crude oil benchmark of $64.84 and domestic oil production of 1.84 million barrels per day for the 2026 fiscal year. Another presidential communication seeking consideration and passage of the 2025 budget of the Niger Delta Development Commission was referred to the House Committee on NDDC.
The NDDC is prioritizing improvement in youth empowerment, energy and power supply.
Critical amendments to the Electoral Act 2022 include the provision mandating political parties seeking a merger to each give 9 months notice to INEC, and another proposal to make presiding officers liable for overvoting.
Where the number of votes cast at an election in any polling unit exceeds the number of accredited voters in that polling unit, the presiding officer shall deduct the number of excess votes across all political parties in that political unit, and the presiding officer shall be prosecuted in accordance with the provisions of Section 145 of this Act.
The presiding officer shall deduct the excess votes proportionately across all the political parties in that polling unit.
If a party scores 0 and you want to subtract from that party across board.
We are not supporting.
Let me make the point. Let me make the point.
The House Committee on Electoral Matter believes that diaspora voting is still a tall order.
There are some things that we ought to put in place first. In Nigeria today, our registration of NIN, I believe, is still about 30%. That's what you call social security number in America. And anywhere you want to do diaspora voting, you must be able to know who are Nigerians first.
A conference committee is expected to harmonize the resolutions of the Senate and House of Representatives on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill.
The House of Representatives has kicked off work on a fresh electoral bill, moving to repeal the Electoral Act 2022 and replace it with the Electoral Bill 2025. Lawmakers signaled support for the electoral transmission of results directly from polling units to INEC's result viewing portal. Meanwhile, consideration for the 2026 to 2028 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper is yet to be concluded by the House.
The House Committee on Supply, chaired by Speaker Tajuddin Abbas, deferred consideration and passage of the medium-term expenditure framework to enable the House Committees on Finance and National Planning find a common ground with the executive on oil price benchmark projections.
The committee recommends that the projected crude benchmark price of 64.85, 64.30, 65.50 per barrel for 2026, 2027 and 2028 respectively be reduced to $60 for 2026 per barrel.
It is our work and responsibility to determine where do we accommodate the shortfall. Because there is an apparent shortfall here. If we calculate, we will no longer have 54-point-something trillion as the total budget.
The proposed electoral bill introduces stronger provisions in the use of technology to improve the credibility and transparency of elections, while also proposing stiffer penalties for declaration of false results.
A collection officer commits an offense if he intentionally collects or announces a false result is liable a conviction to imprisonment for a term not less than 2 years. Mr. Chairman, I want to suggest to make it 5 years, considering the gravity of the offense.
The electoral officer is punished by this clause. But what about the beneficiary of this negligence?
The presiding officer shall electronically transmit the results from each unit to the RF portal in real time, and such transmission shall be done simultaneously with the physical collation of results to the world level.
And such transmission shall be done after the prescribed Form EC8A has been signed and stamped by the presiding officer.
So if the electronical fails, is it eligible for the officer to transmit manually?
And the House of Representatives had raised concerns over the uncertainty surrounding the delayed clearance of a Nigerian Air Force C-130 aircraft and its crew in neighboring Burkina Faso, urging the federal government to activate ECOWAS and African Union diplomatic channels. Now, that intervention appears to have paid off, as the aircraft and detained personnel have since been released following diplomatic engagement. In the same sitting, lawmakers also engaged members of the federal government's economic management team on the 2026 to 2028 medium-term expenditure framework submitted by President Bola Tinubu.
Members of the House Committees on Finance and National Planning took on the Ministers of Finance and his budget counterpart on the key parameters of the medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper, which outlines projected expenditure of 54.5 trillion naira for 2026, with projected revenue estimated at 34.3 trillion naira. Lawmakers urged revenue-generating agencies to plug all loopholes that accounted for revenue shortfalls this year.
The NFC gave PPC, number 33, the 2035 is 6.5 trillion. And the 2026, we put almost 7.9 trillion.
We need to look to try to bring in this revenue, which is very much needed, but we must also keep an eye on the fact that how would we adjust in the event that it is not forthcoming.
Our assumptions we believe are reasonable. And where there is underperformance in any of these heads, that is where we need to interrogate and see why is it not bringing the revenue.
On the delayed clearance of the Nigerian Air Force C-130 aircraft in Burkina Faso, the House emphasizes protection of Nigeria's sovereignty as well as national security interests.
Mandate the House of Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defense, Nigerian Air Force, and National Security to jointly interface with the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of External Affairs, and other relevant intelligence agencies to ensure prompt resolution of all issues related to the aircraft and its crew.
We need to also look in the direction of retooling our foreign service, our diplomatic channels.
The need to expand the Abuja-Lokoja highway was highlighted in another resolution as the House advocates its inclusion as a priority project in the next national budget.
Relevant agency to immediately open the closed section of Gogolada, Abaji, Kotonkarifi, Lokoja Expressway, particularly during this Xmas, to ease traffic and congestion for travelers.
9 bills, mostly seeking establishment of federal medical centers in parts of the country, were passed in plenary, while a bill to establish the Federal Capital Territory Scholarship Board scaled second reading.
Every bill before the House comes with more than just clauses and sections. It also comes with titles. There is the long one that tells the full story, and the short one we all remember. But what do they really mean, and why do they matter in lawmaking? Chairman of the House Committee on Rules and Business, Francis Waive, breaks it down.
The terms long and short titles used in lawmaking during the process of lawmaking. When you are doing the first reading, for instance, is the short titles that you mention. You don't go into the details of what the law entails. For instance, you can say a law to amend the 1999 Constitution, as simple as that. As simple as that. But when you now want to go into the long title, you are now explaining to create additional local governments in Delta State. You are now elongating. So that becomes the long title. Every law has a short title and a long title. The short title is usually at the first reading stage. By the time you are passing at the third reading, you must read the long title of that law. So that people understand the law that is being passed.
This week on You and Your Reps, the committee segment stays with renewable energy. We continue the conversation with the chairman of the newly established committee, Afam Victor Ogene, on its mandate early steps and what it means for Nigeria's energy transition.
We are looking at the quantum of green energy jobs that are coming, and we are proposing a green jobs bill that will ensure that for every green job bill project that is coming into the country, we reserve a certain percentage for women, youths, and the disabled community. You know, put together about 40-45% of these jobs should go to Nigerians instead of having people on the outside taking these jobs. Already, in conjunction with an NGO, a Netherlands-based knowledge platform include, and working with the technical board, Nigerian Board for Technical Education, we have developed a curriculum, you know, for renewable energy in schools, so that from early secondary school they begin to imbibe, you know, the whole idea of renewable. We're also pushing that MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies of government, transition to renewable energy. The amount of energy cost that they bear is taking so much toll on their operations. But when you have renewable energy sources, you can at least have electricity to do your work, power the computers, and you'll be saving a whole lot of money. I belong to the Committee on University Education. You go to universities and you see them paying over ₦1 billion a year on electricity charges. Sometimes they're without electricity because they can't afford. Their recurrent expenditure is not enough to take care of that. So they dip their hand in their internally generated revenue that they ought to use for, you know, developmental projects within the school. So the government has graciously, under the first phase, about 12 universities put mini grids for them. These are all the advocacies that we are doing to ensure that people think green and think renewable. We oversight the Nigerian Nuclear Regulatory Agency and then the Nigeria Atomic Energy Commission, those two agencies. But we have spoken so long about, you know, that nuclear has several useful and peaceful purposes, but the cost of one modular nuclear facility, Nigeria considers it so much. But that eventually that's the way to go. But right now, if I tell you what they get as capital for each year, is not even up to ₦1 billion, whereas you'll be needing about $20 billion to have one small nuclear reactor that should be able to provide you electricity. And there is a whole lot we can do with that. We have the gamma irradiation facility at Sheda, which some of these produce that we should take abroad. If you pass yams, for instance, through the gamma irradiation, that yam can last for the next 6 months, you know. And with the gamma stamp, then you can export it and earn revenue. But we don't do that. Ghana here exports yam. They take our yam, pass it through their system, and you go, the facility is lying there in Sheda, you know, in Gwagwalada, and not much is happening. So what it requires is an area that requires funding. And then all our X-ray machines and all of that, these are things that you put money and get money. There are drugs that you have to get from South Africa because we have not set up our facilities right. So we are talking about it is a work in progress, and I hope that someday the executive will see the need to look at nuclear, atomic energy in Nigeria. When they say atomic, our mind goes to the Hiroshima and the Nagasaki bombing and think that atomic is just for bomb. No, is for peaceful use, number one, provision of electricity.
And that has been You and Your Reps this week. Thanks for watching and staying connected to the work of your representatives. I am Victor Azu. See you next time.